What's up, you guys? Steven back again, Magic Metal Money. Enough BS, all right? We're not messing around anymore. We're not just going to talk hypotheticals. Let's get to the numbers, all right? Magic the Gathering, investments, speculation, a little bit of both, let's be honest. It's really, really risky. What do the actual numbers tell us? What are the returns? I promise you, even with the, the little clickbait title, the results are going to shock you, all right? Just be ready to poop your pants. The numbers are insane. So, let's dive in. We're going to talk about some sets here, what the returns have been. And no, I'm not going to say if you bought a Black Lotus for $5.93 and now you sold it for whatever, 100 grand. We're not going to talk about those extremes. We're just going to talk about sealed product, right? You buy a box of boosters, booster box, and you just keep it sealed. That's it. And I'm even going to leave out like Urza's Saga, ones that are like 5 grand today or whatever. We're not going to talk about those. So honestly, all of the rules that I made, I took this as conservative as I could. Right? I made this as conservative as I could. So first of all, I assumed your cost basis was $90 a box throughout time, over the last decade. So, maybe you can get yours for $80, right? Maybe you're an Alpha Investments Patreon and you get yours for $79.99 shipped, as he always says. Or maybe you have a deal with a local game store and you say, hey man, I'm just going to buy 2 cases from you on a regular basis. So because of the volume and the ease of the transaction and the regularity of it, he agrees. All right, I'll sell them to you for $85 a box. He gets them for 80, so he makes $5 a box, whatever. He's fine with it. After taxes, we're at $90. So, realistically, I thought $90 was realistic. I didn't want to say 80. I didn't want to say 100. I also assume that once we sell, that we're selling on eBay and we got the big old 12% fees, right? So all these numbers we're going to talk about are net of your selling fees, and I assume 12% to cover eBay and PayPal. And then also, I think I charge $8 shipping, which won't matter for some of the older sets when they're so big, but some of the newer sets, when you're only clearing $100 or whatever, that $8 makes a difference. So I definitely wanted to include that, for your shipping costs. Also, in finding my prices, I only went with sold listings, right? So I didn't say, hey, look at this. Someone listed a original Theros box for $300. Guess that's the price of it? No, we're not doing that. And honestly, some of them I had to make guesses. So sometimes on eBay, there's only a handful a month, for some of these boxes that only a few are being sold a month. And so I didn't want to go with just the highest one. So I had to make some assumptions. Sometimes if I noticed a consistent price in November, but then an uptick in October and December, I kind of chose in the middle, to make it a little more fair. So just know I didn't choose the most extreme prices and I only went with sold listings. Last assumption is that we acquire our boxes about a year after release. So if a box came out in 2008, we acquired them in 2009, so we didn't have to sit on dead money. I know some sets that's not realistic throughout time. Whatever, all right? I made this big nasty spreadsheet. It took me like an hour and a half. Last thing I'm going to do is try to account for Dominaria sold out early, so you had to buy this one. Whatever, I don't care, right? Let's dive in with all that. Whew. That was a lot of disclaimers. Let's dive in. Rule number 1. After all those disclaimers, we got some rules to go with it too. Rule number 1 is I did not include anything after Theros, not even Born of the Gods, not even the full Theros block, simply because I wanted to go 5 years back, because realistically, this is not a game you play unless you're willing to play for minimum 5 years. Just like how in the stock market, you really shouldn't park money in the stock market unless you're willing to let it sit for kind of a minimum of 5 years. I think the same is true for Magic at a minimum. You're probably looking at better at about 7 to 8 years realistically as your minimum horizon there, but we'll say 5 years. And the reason being is, of course, is it just needs time. Stock market, the reason you wait 5 years is because, hey, we need to ride out the waves of the economy, right? It's going to go up and down. It's going to ebb and flow. We got to hold off on all that and kind of wait to make sure we're not caught in the middle of some cycles. So that's why they say 5 years at a minimum. Magic, different. Realistically, the reason is because it's going to be flat for so long. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to Theros. But just know, for the longest time, it's just flat, right? And then finally, it starts to skyrocket after a few years. So realistically, you're not getting any returns. Your money's dead for a year or two after you acquire a box, which is a year after it is released. So usually you're looking at like 3 years post-release for any type of real movement. And so for that reason, 5 year minimum, not including anything more recent than that. I also decided to go back just to Shadowmoor because that is 10 years worth of sets. So that gives us a solid mixture of time. And as we know, there have been some different ups and downs over the years. If I went back to like Urza's Saga, all these numbers skyrocket even more. I left off the oldest sets and wanted to start with Theros, but to be fair, with these numbers, we're going to go over them all, but this does include Return to Ravnica block. And spoiler alert, dead money. That has done absolutely nothing. So when I'm going to talk about our full scope and our full portfolio, the idea is that, hey, starting in Shadowmoor all the way through Theros, we decided to buy a box of every set, all right, or a case of every set, or $1,000 of every set, whatever you want to do, right? But it's equal. We're not saying I'm guessing hard and I'm betting hard. Oh, I didn't include any core sets, by the way. But we did. I'm not saying, hey, I knew to go hard in Shadowmoor and I knew to back off with Shards of Alara, right? I knew that. No, we're not going to do any of that. We're not going to do any. We're just going to say, assume that you just said, hey, I'm going to buy the same amount of every single set over the course of 10 years. So, Shadowmoor, you bought it at $90, and now you sold it for $750. You net $652. It's a 57% annual return. Yep. Those are the numbers. Your gross, you almost 10x, not quite. 80x or something, or 8x. Net, you're still looking at sevenfolding your money, more than that. Then sevenfold. All right, let's go. So you're getting 700% return over the course of when the Shadowmoor came out, 2006 or something. So through 2000, you bought it in 2007. I could be off by a year or two, but something like that. Anyway, over the course of that amount of time to now, if you sold it, you got 700% return. So your annual return is 57%, right? That's how we're doing this. That's how we're doing the math. I'm not going to go through every single set, but that's the idea, right? Is that we said, hey, you bought it for $90 a year after release. You sold it on eBay for a realistic price, going on what's actual sold in recent times over the last month or two. And then, we're netting that 12% minus your $8 shipping. So $90 box, you net $652. Crazy amount of money, right? So obviously, you buy 100 of those, right? Or 10 of those. We'll just say 10. Get you $900. You turn that $900 into $6,500. Pretty freaking sweet, right? No one's gonna be sad about that. So that's where we're going with Shadowmoor. It was a great one. Then Shards of Alara wasn't as great. Obviously there was Eventide and Morningtide, Lorwyn, all those stuff. Well, I guess Lorwyn, and that was before, right? Yeah. So anyway, Shards of Alara, hasn't done nearly as well. You can sell it now for $450. You're gonna net $388. That's 30% a year, aka better than any hedge fund has ever done, right? Now, before you all freak out, I'm not saying we go park all our money in Magic. Just relax for a second. We're going to get there. We're going to talk about our disclaimers and our portfolio decisions and all that. So relax. No, I'm not saying that hedge fund managers are idiots and they should just put their billions of dollars under assets into Magic. That wouldn't work. Market's not that big. It's impossible. Not a thing. I am just saying though, for you and I, right, using our benchmark to say, hey, that box got a 30% return on average year over year. Again, the first few years were flat, but over the course of time, we're averaging 30% a year. Shadowmoor was 57. That's insane. If you as an individual investor are getting a consistent like 11, 12%, you're killing it. If you're getting 9, 10%, you're doing awesome. And 7, 8%, you're doing fine, right? So that's the idea, right? Let's say you park all your money in the S&P 500. That averages about 10% a year over the last 100 years or so. So those are the benchmarks we're talking about, right? You got to keep that in mind. So when I say it did terrible at 30%, that's an insane rate, like criminal rate. You know what I'm saying? Worldwake, this one did fine, I guess. They're about $1,000, right? Just shy of $1,000. They're selling for like $980. You're netting $850, 94% annual return, right? You're doubling your money every year. Disgusting. Go home. Get out of here. That's disgusting. Now we have some fun ones, right? Because now we get into a couple of blocks where within the block itself, there's huge difference. And that's what I'm saying. We're just assuming that you bought the equal amount of every kind. You didn't know that Scars of Mirrodin was going to sell for $350. Still not a bad return, 26%, netting $300. While New Phyrexia was going to sell for double that at $600, and you're netting $520, right? Getting a 60% return. You didn't know that. I didn't know that. Nobody knew that. So no, we're not saying that you could put all your money in just the only best ones and get a 60% return every year. No. Same thing with the Innistrad, right? Solid product, $4.50 a box. You know, you're netting $3.80, 41% annual return. Disgusting again. And Dark Ascension, $170. You know, 10 years later, right? 170, netting 142. All right, that's not that great. That's still 8% a year. Still totally fine. Totally where you want to be for your returns, right? Even within one block, there could be some huge swings, some huge variance. You're not going to get them all right. No one can predict it. You know, right now you're thinking, hey, if I want to get into this, okay, well, should I go hard into the Return to Ravnica block, right? The Ravnica Allegiance, and should I go there because of the Shocklands? Maybe I should. That sounds good. And which one has Steam Vents versus Temple Garden, right? No, there's no way to know which set is going to do the best. You know, maybe it's Fabled Passage and Oko and the Adventures and the Fairy Tales, and everyone loves Throne of Eldraine. That one's going to do the best. Maybe there's just an insane amount of supply, and maybe that won't get as good of a return over the next 10 years. We don't know, right? And so that's why we're just saying, hey, you can't guess this stuff. You can't predict it. So you're going to buy equal amounts of every single one. You know, all the way up to Return to Ravnica block. Again, spoiler alert, did terrible. You're netting anywhere from negative 2% a year from Dragon's Maze to 1% a year with Return to Ravnica. Just garbage. Hot garbage. That's what it was. You know, of course, this is where they changed their printing policy, and you know, there's just way so much supply out there. Just a ton of supply of Return to Ravnica block. Hasn't done great. So with one more, and that's going to be in our total calculations at the end here. But we did do one more set of Theros. Those are about 160 right now, netting 133. So again, 8% a year. Not bad. But remember, we're just barely starting to make that upturn, right? It stays flat. That's how Magic works, and collectibles in general, they stay flat for a number of years. And then over time, people decide, all right, I'm going to start opening some boxes. You know, these haven't done anything. I'm just going to open them. I'm going to draft them. The supply goes down over time, right? And part of that is because the price isn't going up. And so people are thinking, hey, why am I just going to sit on this box hoping I get rich one day when I could just draft it and have some fun with my friends? And so supply of sealed product goes down. And then eventually you finally get there where you start to curve and prices start to go up and the market starts to value the product over time. You know, some things can speed that process up. You know, it's not just about product getting, more product getting opened and the supply going down. Sometimes the demand will skyrocket. You know, it depends on the cards. It depends on different announcements. I mean, when Pioneer was announced, that gave a huge boon to all the most recent sets. So even though we're in the market less than 5 years, all those sets, you know, from Kaladesh with Our Devastation, you know, those have actually done really well. A lot of that's been more recent though. So anyway, there's different factors that can go into whether it's supply or demand, but over time it does take a while before finally that price goes up. We're starting to see that with Theros. So it's at, you know, they're at 160 now. It doesn't take that much longer until they're at 200 a box. You know what I'm saying? And when your price base is only 90, that other $40, that's another 50% increase, just under. So it could be a big deal, those little timings. So the difference between 4 years and 5 years sometimes can be, you know, all of your return, right? Whether it's just dead and then boom, catches you up. Here are the final numbers, right? Assuming that you bought equally for every set from Shadowmoor through Theros, which includes Theros, you know, it includes Dark Ascension, it includes the Return to Ravnica and Dragon's Maze, right? And it includes all that. So I didn't just cherry pick only the best chunk of time. I tried to make this a little more fair. The reality is your average return for your portfolio at this point would be 34% a year. Get out, go home. That's disgusting. To put that in perspective, again, the S&P, we're saying 10%. So if you take $10,000 at a 10% return over the course of 10 years, you've turned that $10,000 into $26,000. Phenomenal. You've 2.5x your money. That's freaking great. You should celebrate. It feels good. You know, over the course of 10 years, you turn $10,000 into $26,000. If you were getting 34% a year, that $10,000 at the end of 10 years, $186K. Yeah, 186. Disgusting. It's just insane amounts of money, right? You're almost 20xing your money at that point. It just doesn't make any sense. it's gross. You know, if you do a little TVM calculation, you put in 34%, you get to 186. And hey, let's just say by some miracle you don't have to pay eBay fees or shipping, and you for somehow you're able to offload all these through just your networking and, you know, whatever you're doing. You're just dealing cash deals at your back door, whatever the heck you're doing. You'd actually be at 42%, and that 10K would have turned to $333,000. All right, okay, so there it is. But we can't ignore the fees. To do so would just be, you know, completely inaccurate. So I'm not going to focus on that. It makes our measly 34% a year sound really lame compared to 42. Makes us all sad. Makes us realize, oh man, what have we been doing? We could get more than that. You know, we might as well just go find a way to print money at this point, because you know, 34% is just not that good. Those are the numbers. So here's the question: do you go park all your money in Magic? Sure, why not? You know, you might lose it all, and you might end up with nothing at the end. So if you're willing to do that, cool, good for you. You know me, my rule: no more than 5 to 10% of your portfolio in collectibles or alternative investments. Maybe you have a different risk appetite. You decide to go up to 20, but hopefully you're not doing all 100%. But let me tell you, the returns are pretty spicy.